How you doing today, Garrett?
Doing great. How are you?
Hey, fantastic, thank you. We're gonna make this one a little bit shorter. Sounds like you got some Thai food to eat with your wife.
That's right. Lunch plans, lunch date.
Yep, that's awesome.
Yeah.
For anybody who wants to weigh into the conversation, I'm basically arguing that Penang curry is much better than yellow curry, but I think Garrett's a little bit of a wimp when it comes to spice.
I am a very much wimp with the spice.
So if you lost all your respect for him, I understand, but we're gonna.
I mean, that's probably already been gone if that's what cost the respect, but I understand.
I don't know. I mean, different people care about different things. For somebody that loves
Sometimes
marketing, they probably like you, but if they're really into curry
or
and
into spice,
into spice,
not into
yeah,
curry.
that's right.
Yeah.
All right, same thing.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super excited for today's episode. We've been talking about this a lot. And this is a topic that has a ton of myths and misunderstandings, not just among real estate investors, but also among professionals. Like this is a topic where like actual professional PPC marketers can't get it right after years of their career, which
Yeah.
which is crazy. Like we have to have so much internal training around this, and within our company. And I don't think it's that complicated. So hopefully we can distill it and get through some of those myths and really understand what's going on and make something out of this.
Definitely. Yeah. And if that's not enough mystery and hype, let's make it extra buzzwordy black hat marketing for you. What if I could tell you that with this with this one trick, you could cut down your lead quality or cut down your cost per lead by 35%. Uh, Experts don't want you to know this one trick about Google Ads PPC.
That's great. Yeah,
Stay tuned for more.
you should definitely be a copywriter for ClickFunnels.
That's right.
All right, let's jump into it.
Okay.
So this is all surrounding impression share, and really there's kind of this fun trio of metrics surrounding impression share. But let's talk about first like what is impression share.
Yeah. So in very simple terms, it's basically how often your ads show up as a percentage of the total number of searches made um, for the keywords that you're bidding on.
hmm Exactly. And it is based on your criteria, right? So it's like when
Mhm.
you're eligible,
Correct.
right? So theoretically, 100% impression share means every time your ad could show, you show.
Hmm.
Versus 10% might mean that 10% of the time you show. A lot of people, when they first hear about their metric, they're just like, okay, perfect. How do I get it to 100%? Like that's their idea, right?
Right.
They almost think of an agency, like the role of the agency is to get that number as high as
Just bump
possible.
it up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because your job is for a budget to get me the highest impression share possible.
Hmm.
Where's that logic flawed?
Well, I think where it's flawed is that not every search is of equal value, both from the person making the search and from what's being searched. If they were all equally great, then sure, max it out, like get as much as possible. But like, um, that's not the case. Like different searches are gonna bring you a better ROI, and different people making those searches is also going to give you a different ROI. So you have to maximize that that value on both the person and the search.
Oh, absolutely. And you add the other layer is the cost,
Correct.
right? And everything's going to have a different cost of what it takes.
Mhm.
It's kind of like saying every house in the market we should be buying if we're a wholesaler. That's not the case because like you intentionally avoid houses that sell for too much. And
Mhm.
if somebody else is coming in willing to pay way more, then you don't want that house.
Have at
I
it,
mean, of
guy.
course, there's some different like obviously in real estate, if you could just be really good at sales and negotiation, and even though there's a higher offer, you could win the deal. That's great.
Right.
In this world of PPC, there's no such thing as that, right? It's just kind of like it goes for whatever it goes for.
Yeah, it's an auction.
Yeah, it's an auction. So, um, yeah, I think that's super interesting. And then there's also the component of like only certain things are feasible with a certain budget, right?
Mhm.
So it's higher impression share. I'd say generally correlates with more leads. If the quality of the well, assuming all the targeting parameters are the same, right? If you could
Mhm.
take everything else the same and go from 20 to 40% impression share, you do get more leads. Usually it costs more money though, right?
Mhm.
But it never is all the same, right? So that's where optimizing towards impression shares just doesn't make sense unless all your other parameters are there.
Right.
So let's talk about this trio. I talked about how there's this trio of metrics, right? We have search impression share, that's one of them.
Mhm.
What are the other two?
So the other two are going to be subsets of that larger metric, and they're going to be the percentage of your share that you've lost due to budget, and the percentage lost due to rank.
So let's dig in just before we get any
Yeah.
deeper into that. I want to clarify exactly how this works. So these three numbers, if you add them together, they equal 100%. Right. So you have the entire universe of what's possible, right? And you're either showing up or you're not showing up because of budget, or you're not showing up because of rank, right? And those are the only three options, right? It's going to fall into one of those buckets. So basically, those two that you mentioned, those are lost impression share metrics. What's the difference between a lost impression share to budget and a lost impression share to rank?
So rank, it's kind of a black box from Google exactly how it's measured. But the simplest way to look at it is it's a combination of your bids, your ad quality, your keyword quality, and your landing page quality. But the biggest factor by far is your bids. So when we like say rank, probably easiest to kind of just turn rank into bids. Because that's kind of the main purpose of this podcast. There's other ones we've done where we have talked about rank from ads and from landing pages, but for now let's just focus on bids as the main driver of that metric.
Well, yeah, I think that's really appropriate, because the way some PPC marketers would look at this is like, oh no, I have a lot of lost impression here to rank. I need to work on all those other things. But really, those other things are things where like there is no limit to how good they can be, and you should always be working on them. So I don't think this is a signal that you need to work on them. I think those should always be maxed out. So assuming you're always doing everything you can there, then the only thing left to change is bids.
Correct.
Right? I don't think you should just start looking at writing your ads in a relevant way the second that you have a high impression share loss to rank.
Correct.
So yeah, so basically that's bids. Would it be fair to simplify that and say it pretty much means somebody else is bidding higher than you?
Yeah, usually.
So you didn't show up because somebody else was willing to pay more.
Yep.
Okay. And what about budget?
Essentially, if we look at your ads like being active over a given day, in essence, is how early in the day your ads stopped running because your budget was used up too early in the day. So if you're limited by budget, that means that your budget ran out, but there were still available impressions to be captured if your budget wasn't already used up by by the clicks that were captured.
Yeah, totally understood. I think a good comparison to this is, picture we're going to an auction. In this auction, they're going to sell 100 widgets throughout the day.
I love a good widget.
Yeah, love a good widget too.
Yeah.
So I don't know why widget's just like the default word that people always use for stuff like this, but I'm just following the trend.
A whoosy whatsy.
A whoosy whatsy. Okay, I can't say that. I can't say that with a straight face. I'm going to use the word widget.
Love
So there's going to be 100 widgets sold during the day. So let's just say the day ends and you have bought 25 of those widgets. That is a 25% impression share, basically, assuming the widget is an impression. That's what Google sells. So let's talk about like how that could have happened throughout the day. Let's just say in that day, the average widget ended up selling for $40, but you were bidding $100 for those, and you just bought the first 25 that came, and then you basically just had to go home after the first 25 sold because you were out of money. And now you've got the next 75 that maybe sold for less than what you are willing to pay, because you're willing to pay $100 for a widget, right? So the next 75 sold for $40 or whatever the case is, and you didn't get those. That's lost impression share to budget, because you were willing to pay the price. Your bids were sufficient. Your budget was not. So even though this is worth it to me, I don't have the money to pay for it according to my budget. That's how you set your daily budget in Google. The other side of that would be, you bought 25 widgets during the day and you bought them for $100 each. And then, maybe you had $100,000 ready at that auction. You were ready to spend $100,000, but you're only willing to pay $100 for a widget. But then 75 of those widgets sold for $120, $150, $200, whatever the case is, something that you couldn't afford. So you weren't getting them, not because you didn't have the money. You had plenty of money, but you just weren't willing to pay the price on an individual level. That's your lost impression share to rank.
Correct.
Do you think that's a decent enough analogy?
Yeah, and what's important to look here is like both of those outcomes aren't necessarily good or bad. Like in your business, you could sell those, again for 2 times your bid. That's a win.
Mhm.
And so it's important as you're going through this process to like understand that um, your success isn't based on those metrics themselves. It's based on how those metrics help you get to the outcomes in your business that matter. Because you can crush it with these metrics and still be in the red as a business. And likewise, you can keep those low and think, wow, I'm so frugal, and you're losing out on all this volume that you could be capturing at a good margin. So it's not black or white, like high is good, low is bad, and it's more like where does it have to be to kind of maximize, to kind of reach that top point of that bell curve.
Absolutely. There's totally a point. And to bring that into the analogy, let's just say these widgets, I'm a wholesaler of widgets, right? And let's
Mm,
just say I can sell those for $200.
yeah,
If there is somebody who is now bidding $500 on that widget and they're buying it, what's the best thing for me to do? Not get competitive and say,
yeah,
I want to pay $600 when
yeah.
I can only sell it for 200.
Come on, agency, get me that widget
Yes.
for twice my price.
Yeah, get upset at my bidder that's doing the
Yeah,
bidding. That's the last thing I want to do, right?
correct.
The best thing I could do is say, okay, that's not a price that works for me, and leave it. And in that way, loss due to rank is actually sometimes a really good thing if it's the right loss that you're doing. Because there's some fool who's going to pay too much always,
Hmm.
especially in these competitive worlds that we play in, and especially where people don't understand these metrics and how they work. You talked about how there's not really good or bad, but there is optimal. I
Hmm.
want to kind of clarify that a little bit because it's not like we want a certain impression share loss due to budget or rank or whatever the case is. But I would say that we do like loss due to rank is generally not a bad thing. However, loss due to budget can be a bad thing because it proves potential inefficiency. And this is where this like most people get lost. So I'm going to try to like tiptoe nice and slow through this, and I'm hoping you can help
Hmm.
make this super super clear to understand. But I think taking it back to this auction analogy, if we're just remembering that scenario, if we're going through and buying, you know, paying $100 for every widget for the first 25, and then the rest of the day they sell for $5, but we ran out of money. How could we more efficiently manage that whole situation? It'd probably be that we're bidding less money
Hmm.
for those widgets because we don't need to bid that much in order to win the number that we need because we're just going to run out of budget anyways, right? So we might be better off taking that same amount of money and bidding $50 instead of $100. And then maybe we could buy 40 widgets with our budget instead of 25 or, whatever the numbers would work out to. It depends on,
Right.
what other people are bidding and stuff like that. There's two metrics. I don't stop me if this is just too deep. Um, but I kind of think of it like there's one metric that doesn't exist in Google Ads, but it absolutely should.
Hmm.
It's one that's called potential spend. And I'll try to explain what this
Mm.
means. I can't tell if you're smiling at me like I'm just going to lose everybody or like this makes sense. But
No, no, this is like a deep cut that people need to really understand.
I really think this is the level. Like there's different things. Sometimes we talk about stuff on this podcast that like a real estate investor, if you're like working with an agency to manage it, you don't need to know that,
Hmm.
right? You don't need to know all about keyword match types and different types of bid strategies and stuff. This you need to understand. Like this is like basic foundational economics of your business
Hmm.
as it relates to PPC. I think it's really important. As far as most people get for this is they see, um, I can't believe we haven't even mentioned this yet. They see this like big red thing in the Google Ads account that says limited by budget, right? This is basically just Google highlighting something in these underlying metrics. And they're telling you to do one thing. It's not necessarily what you should do, right? That, yeah.
Yeah.
For those that can't see Garrett, he's raising his finger as if Google just wants you to spend more money, right?
Blow that budget.
Yeah. But it's not exactly, yeah, it's not exactly the way to talk about it. So let's make sure we understand the metrics first and then we'll dive into it. So, because it's not just are you limited by budget or not, it's to what extent are you limited by budget? And that can't be shown by just a red sign that says, hey, you spend more money. But this potential spend. So this, when we're talking about potential spend, and again, this isn't a metric that exists in Google. This is one that you have to calculate yourself, or just even understand theoretically, and that's okay.
I wonder if we put a link to this formula in the podcast show notes.
I'm totally down to do that. Yeah, we get throw a link to this formula.
Let's do it.
Which, as far as I understand, I've never seen any other PPC marketer even talk about this. Like in the whole world of PPC, I don't know why. I don't know why nobody talks about this. But it's basically, picture you have an unlimited budget, right? Infinity dollars that you can spend, but your bids are fixed at whatever your bids are. So you're bidding. Let's just say you're in a target CPA bid strategy and you're bidding $300 per acquisition.
Mm-hmm.
So what you're basically telling Google there is there's two constraints. One, I don't want to pay more than this cost per lead. And two, I can't spend more than my budget. But in this case, the budget's infinite, right? So you're basically saying, give me as much volume as you can without surpassing that cost per lead. With their standard model of diminishing returns and stuff, basically the higher, this is like basic supply and demand economics, right? The higher the tolerance for cost per lead, the more volume you can get at that tolerance. There is, with like the limited number of people that search on Google and within your parameters for like your keywords and your locations, et cetera, there's a finite number there. And with your bids at that certain point, there's a finite number of those auctions that you're going to win. So there's this amount of money that you would spend if you had no budget. Like for example, let's just say if I bid $100 for clicks and I could get 10 of them, then I would spend $1,000, even if I had an infinite budget, just because 1,000 is all I would get to because other people are outbidding me or whatever the case is. But I wouldn't have limitation by budget because I have an infinite budget. So that's your potential spend. The next thing to think about is how does your potential spend interact with your budget? So if you calculate out your potential spend and your potential spend is higher than your budget, then what you have is limitation by budget. If your potential spend is lower than your budget, then what happens is you're underspending. And people get frustrated by this because they're telling Google, spend $10,000 a month, and then they spend $5,000 a month. So it's kind of this swinging game, right? So as you change your bids, you change your potential spend. If your potential spend gets below the budget, now you're underbidding, now you're underspending, right? You wanted to spend your 10 grand a month, now you're spending 5. If your potential spend gets higher than your budget, this is like the silent killer of Google Ads. Because what's going to happen is it's going to say limited by budget. Everybody's just going to say, oh, Google's just trying to get you to spend more money. But there's actual viable metrics behind this that are showing, hey, your potential spend is higher than your budget. That doesn't mean that you need to raise your budget. It means that your bids are incompatible with your budget, which means that you either have to lower your bids or you have to raise your budget. But if you do nothing, what you're doing is you're paying a premium without getting the volume that should be associated with paying that premium. I hope that made sense.
Yeah.
Help me clarify it. Fill in the gaps.
It made sense to me, but if I can try and explain it like a pleb, I will try. So basically, your account has a fixed amount it can spend, and the goal is to, and tell me if I'm doing this incorrectly, this explanation. And the goal of this calculator is to find the sweet spot between maximizing that spend, like maximizing how much of that maximum available, while not paying a premium to get to that point.
Yeah.
Right.
It's basically, think of it like this. Like there's a law of diminishing returns, right? Companies that spend more money, they actually have a higher cost per lead. So if that's true, and that's aside from any like data advantages or whatever the case is, right? So there's a lot to potentially unpack there. A very controversial statement, but let's just say we cut all that out and we just say, if you have a higher impression share, you have a higher cost per lead. And we have data that proves exactly that. Like very clear correlation between impression share and cost per lead.
Yeah.
So basically, you kind of have to decide which company you want to be. There's some companies where in a given market, their goal is to maximize volume. So what they do is they bid really high on a per lead basis, having a higher cost per lead, assuming equal lead quality. Another fun thing that we can talk about later.
Yeah.
Decreases return on investment, right? You could sell your widgets for $2,000. You were paying $500 for them. Now you pay $1,000 for them. You've now cut down on your margins, right? Or the companies that are spending less, they just kind of bid really low and pick one off at a cheap price here and there. And then they have great margins when they sell those, right? And there's different companies doing different things in the markets. You're going to have like that company that's always really, really aggressive with their bids, and they're going to have a low return on investment, but they're going to do a lot of volume. And usually more profit than the company that has a smaller budget, although at a smaller margin. So they do a lot of revenue, and then by the time you whittle away at it, they might have more profit, but not that much than somebody who has a small budget. So what you're doing when you're overbidding, basically, or when you have a limitation by budget, what it means is that you have the bids of that large company, yet you have the budget of that small company, which means you get the worst of both worlds, because now you have to pay the price per lead and get the kind of margin that the large company has, which is not good. But why do they do that? They do it because they make it up on volume. But wait, you don't get the volume either because you have a low budget too.
Mm-hmm.
So now you don't have either of those things, and it's just inefficient. So again, what it's saying is you have incompatible bids and budget. What Google's going to tell you to do is raise your budget. They're saying, why don't you just get all the volume? If you're willing to pay that much per lead, why don't you just buy more of them? Because there's more to get at that price, which makes sense. And it's totally a viable option for a lot of people. But where people get tripped up here is they say, oh, Google's just trying to get you to spend more money. There's no validity to that. There's a lot of validity to that. If you actually are fine on your cost per lead and you want more volume, it's saying you can do that. If you're not there, then what you need to do is lower bids, because you can actually increase your return on investment. It's the easiest increase in return on investment ever. You just lower bids, and suddenly the return on investment goes up.
So just to bring this back to a more actionable plan for the listeners, if I'm an investor and I see that big red alert, where should I go? What should I look at first, and what should I do about it?
Okay, yeah, let's talk about this.
Yeah.
So there's a rudimentary way to do this, and there's a harder way, right? So if you want to be really rudimentary, not super calculated, what you do is you just say, oh, I'm limited by budget. I have to make this decision now. Do I want to lower bids or do I want to raise budget? And you can do either, or you can do a little bit of each, and that's fine. But it's telling you you're inefficient wherever you are. And by the way, this is not uncommon at all. Even amongst our client accounts, I'm sure we have a client listening to this and looking hey, I'm limited by budget. The question is to what extent, and how far are you off? And the main thing is to always be working on dialing this in. If you want to be more data driven, you can actually pull these metrics. You could pull your impression share, your loss due to budget, your loss due to rank. The way that you calculate this, should I talk about how to calculate this? Or
No, let's just put the link.
Yeah. We'll put a link in the show notes to a way to calculate what your potential spend is.
Yeah.
You calculate your potential spend based on those 3 metrics and the amount that you're spending. And then that basically, you look at your potential spend in relation to where your budget is, and it tells you, because you still know you need to lower your bids or you need to raise your budget. That tells you how aggressive you need to be. If your potential spend is 10x higher than your budget, then you need to be really aggressive with your decrease in bids. And if you're way underspending, you need to be aggressive with an increase. Usually, our rule of thumb is that you want to divide the amount of change that you want by 3. So if you need to double your amount that you spend, then you might increase bids by 30%, for example.
Yeah.
Although it's going to be all over the place in terms of how it reacts. This is not a perfect science. It's a game where we do it 3 times weekly with some accounts, weekly with the least frequent accounts, where you want to be making these adjustments to try to get it dialed in.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's what you do. But don't take it to mean Google needs you to spend more money. Just take it to mean your bids and your budget are incompatible. And Google is just highlighting one of those things, not both of them. Okay, so moving on from that, let's talk about the fear that a lot of people have and the misconception that seems to exist in the industry. There is a thought that lead quality and position on Google correlate. So to explain this, to play devil's advocate against what we're going to say, what people would say is if you're bidding low, then what happens is you're showing up lower on Google and you're not getting the good leads. The good leads come from position number 1. The bad leads come when you're lower, because you're just getting the scraps or the window shoppers, basically, who are willing to go that deep. Is that true? What do we do about that? Can lowering your bids degrade your lead quality?
Well, first of all, I can see where this belief took root, and I actually at one point told people that I worked with that was the case, and so
it may even be more
makes
true.
sense in certain verticals. It's not true in this one, and so we pulled a ton of data, graphed it out, and we didn't find any correlation.
Yeah. And to explain that a little bit more deeply, so we're basically trying to see does the position of the ad correlate with the lead close rate across our clients. This is a kind of tough analysis to do because all the close rate stuff is offline and then the impression share stuff is in the platform and stuff like that. The correlation between them, I don't know how much everybody knows about correlation. If you remember back to like high school statistics, 0 means it's not correlated. 1 means it's perfectly correlated for an R-squared value. The correlation is 0.03 between those things, which is like
nothing,
completely negligible, like basically 0 correlation between those things. So it's interesting that you say that though, because this could actually be true in other industries. And maybe you have some experience like that. I've mostly only ever done real estate investment PVC. So I know, only about this industry for the most part as to how this actually plays out. But sorry, continue. I just want to make that clear, what the data says.
I've only, I mean, it is pretty prominent in like HVAC, but it's not at all here. And the reason why that matters is because those top spots cost more than the lower spots do. And so if you're paying a premium to be, higher up in the results, and there isn't a tie with that higher cost per click with better lead quality or better close rates, then this need to like rank higher is it's not based in data and it's not based in revenue. And so
It's an ego thing usually.
It's all ego, which is frankly what most bidding fears come down to. And in this case, it's not going to give you any better return being up higher in this industry.
Yeah. And I honestly don't know how to explain why the data is what it is, but all I can say is that it is somehow.
Right.
And I think really good evidence for that. Notice so many of the companies that are doing really well with PVC tend to be spread out geographically. They have the lowest impression shares because they're dealing in like national scenarios, for example. So this shows like polar extremes, right? We have like Joe in a market who spends 10 grand and the market has hardly anybody in it. And he's like number 1 all the time and stuff. And we have his close rate and we compare it to somebody else who's targeting 48 states and bidding extremely low and just kind of picking off the like cheapest clicks they can find. And the close rates are reasonably different between those two companies, which is so interesting to me.
Yeah.
So it doesn't seem to make a difference at all. I'll give one caveat to this of where I've seen this hurt you. So that data that I just expressed is from our clients. There's certain things that we manage well across our clients that make that data what it is. I would argue if you see a decrease in lead quality in this industry by a decreasing of your bids, it means that your targeting was wrong in the first place. And a classic example of this, let's just say I'm targeting the state of Florida with my ads and I'm bidding really high. I'm getting a lot of leads in Tampa, Orlando, Miami, Jacksonville, hot spots, right? Let's just say I push my bids really low. Now I'm going to get all my leads in rural Florida because I'm not going to be able to spend as much for the leads like I want in those hot areas. I've always, even when my bids were high, I was wasting money in the rural areas. But now as I change my bids, it changes the ratio of the number of leads I get from rural areas versus urban areas. And that makes my 10% of my budget that was being wasted turn into 80% of my budget that's being wasted. So now I see, lowering bids was the problem. It gets me the wrong kind of leads. When the problem is there's always those wrong kind of leads. The problem with the 10% or the 90%, it's just the bids are adjusting what ratio you get of one thing versus the other. Versus if I had quality targeting and I was targeting what I actually want to, then it would have been fine. Any thoughts on that concept?
Yeah, I think that's a very, very good point, and I think it kind of just shows that there's nuance in all of this, and you can't just make one change, see how it does, and then base everything off of a very small sample size. It has to be careful, it has to be data driven, and it has to be based on logic and not emotion or fear.
Yeah, and what I just talked about, it like. I gave locations as an example that everybody understands, but the same thing can happen for keywords. The same thing can happen for your ad schedule.
Yeah.
Any targeting criteria, right?
Yeah.
So sometimes what you see is when you mess with bids, it actually just changes the ratio of your budget going to different things, and you expose something that was already wasteful within your campaign. And it doesn't mean that the bids made that happen. It's just, you're just exposing the problem that was already there. So keep that in mind. If you have a decrease in quality when you change bids, it could be due to you're getting results out of luck, not out of like good targeting in the first place. So let's make this actionable, right? Let's just say I'm a business owner. I'm listening to this and I'm trying to figure out, what do I do Maybe I'm managing my own PPC, but I think more of the people listening to this are probably just trying to figure out how to win in this game.
Mhm.
Like so many people are so frustrated because they hear about all the success in PPC, but they can't seem to figure it out themselves, right? So if I'm like a business owner trying to know enough to be dangerous, trying to figure out like what does this mean as to how I can adjust my strategy according to this. Let's talk about some like actionable insights.
Mhm. Yeah, I would say that the first step is to go into this episode's show notes, go, go to the link for the bid calculator, and plug in your numbers and see what that tells you, and that's going to give you an idea of how far off you are right now.